Just gone lunchtime. This is all angles here on eNCA. Good afternoon. I'm Masego Rahlaga. Now it's that time of the day when we give you an update on how far some of the stories we've been following for you throughout the course of the day have advanced. Here's your lunchtime update. We've got our reporters who have been out and about bringing us the latest news on our top stories. I am joined now by Lethiwe Mdluli in Pietermaritzburg and Thathiah in Durban. Lethiwe, let me start with you. Of course, the former President Jacob Zuma's private prosecution attempt of Billy Downer and Karen Moore has been rejected in the High Court, and the former president has to pay the costs. So what was said in the judgment, Lethiwe, and what have been the reaction from legal experts?
Well, Masego, it was a very short court appearance today in the Pietermaritzburg High Court. We heard the judge handing down the judgment saying that he is setting aside that application by the former president with costs and basically ruling in favor of journalist Karen Moore and state advocate Billy Downer. We did speak to Mpumelelo Zigalala, who is from Zigalala Attorneys, about some of the analysis regarding this matter. He is saying that the former president might be appealing this judgment, and we just heard from the spokesperson from the Jacob Zuma Foundation, Mzwaleli Manyi, who did confirm that they will be appealing this judgment. Speaking to Zigalala earlier on, he did say that they have 14 days to appeal this judgment, and by the looks of things, the former president and his team will be appealing this judgment. Of course, cameras were not allowed in as well, so we were only able to listen in on that judgment. It took about 2 minutes. It wasn't a long one. And we do understand that before the matter goes back to court in August, because you'd remember that it was postponed to August, they first have to deal with this matter. I also asked Zigalala about some of the reports that the former president is trying, or he is, these are delay tactics from his side. And Zigalala is saying that from his view, he's seeing that the former president is basically using everything that he can legally to try and make sure that his case is heard. But of course, his attempt to privately prosecute Moore and also Downer failed today at the Pietermaritzburg High Court when the judge handed down the judgment. But let's just listen in on some of the analysis from Mpumelelo Zigalala a bit earlier on, just basically explaining to us what took place in court and what we can expect moving forward.
Basically, the court was giving out a short judgment and then said the reasons will follow later, where the physical judgment or the reasons behind the judgment are going to be disseminated. It's a 58-page judgment basically detailing how they arrived at the conclusion that they arrived at, which is that the application for, as brought by Advocate Billy Downer and Ms. Karen Moore, has been successful, meaning that the summons that were issued or that were taken by the former president to privately prosecute the two individuals have been set aside, and the former president is then interdicted or restrained from taking any further action pursuant to those particular summons. It basically means that they can't go back to the magistrate court or any other dispute resolution forum on that matter and then say, I'm bringing you here in this forum so that I can be able to privately prosecute you. But the last one was the awarding of the cost on an attorney and on-client scale, which according to us is the highest scale that you can be able to find in terms of the court order, and one which is usually given in instances where the court is sending out a message of saying that, this particular matter could have been resolved much easier. There was no need for this application to take place. So to sort of punish the receiving party, in this case the former president, let's award the cost on the highest scale which is possible.
All right, let's bring in Heidi Giokos, who's also in Soweto for us today. But Dasen, before I go to Heidi, let me come to you there. There have been several recent unsolved mass shootings in KZN. Recently, the home of Home Affairs whistleblower who was, was shot 6 times in Tongaat. How far are investigations by police in terms of finding the killers?
Look, it's been a very concerning period in KwaZulu-Natal, and I think that echoes the sentiments of almost anyone that lives here because of these mass shootings that you're talking about. A lot of them happening in very public spaces. People are being executed on public roads. Others are being shot in their homes. Earlier, I showed our viewers just one street in an area called Tongaat, which is north of Durban, and there were 3 shootings that we counted. In the one incident, there were 5 people that were killed in 2 separate incidents on the same road, and the other was that of Lethiwe Mdluli, the Home Affairs employee. That was the most recent one. And that one is a very concerning one. It's one that we need to pay attention to as well, because she was due to testify in a criminal matter. And that was against 2 police officers. That was a corruption case, and they were already dismissed as a result of an internal disciplinary hearing. And it was now the criminal matter that was going to court. She was then expected to testify, to be a witness there. Police are not saying whether that was the link and that is why she was killed. But if you just look at the CCTV footage which we've seen, it's absolutely brutal. She was driving along in traffic, and there was a man that ran up to the car, pointed the gun into the car and opened fire, killing her. She crashed into a barrier on the side, and that's how her life ended, just a few kilometers away from her workplace. So it would be disingenuous to say that police are not doing anything. They released a statement saying that they had arrested 9,000 suspects just in May. And they'd also recovered a number of guns, more than 300 guns, in fact. But the number of serious crimes, or the number of suspects for serious crimes within that figure, was about 150 or so for murders. And I think that that is where there's particular interest, because people want to know that these murderers are off the streets. So let's listen now to what Brigadier J. Naika had to say to us. We asked him for an update on that Tongaat investigation. This was his response.
Look, in terms of the one matter in Tongaat where the 5 were killed, detectives from the Provincial Organised Crime Unit have made excellent headway in that matter, to such an extent that they have identified 3 people. Warrants of arrest were issued by the court for their arrest and incarceration. However, those men are aware that we are looking for them. They are on the run. Numerous attempts were made by using the technology available to us to track them. But at this stage they still remain elusive, and we know it's just a matter of time when we'll get them. The other matter where another lady was killed recently, I think it was last week, in Tonga, that matter is still under investigation, and it's still very early stages in that case.
All right, Heidi, you are in Soweto, where a meeting is taking place after violence between taxi drivers and those in the e-hailing services. I understand government officials called that meeting. So what are the points that have been raised in that meeting by both sides?
Yes, we do know that meeting started at 10 o'clock this morning here at the Kliptown Police Station. And I must just emphasize, Masego, that it is now just after 1 o'clock, and I still don't think there has been any resolution to the conflict between taxi drivers and the e-hailing sector. A lot has been said in terms of who has done what, but I think it's important to highlight the fact that the Soweto taxi service, who is being accused in all of this, has once again denied any involvement in the torching and attacks on e-hailing drivers. What we do know is that the MMC for Transport and the MMC for Public Safety was present in that meeting, and they have now decided to move into a closed meeting to have a discussion about a way forward. Of course, it is on the onus of the police here in Kliptown to establish who exactly was behind the torching of those 3 vehicles at Maponya Mall, and of course further police need to investigate what actually happened at Protea Glen on Monday in terms of those 2 vehicles being torched. There's a lot of anger and frustration because the taxi drivers are indicating that they want to understand the process of how Ubers and Bolts work, because they feel as though a whole new Uber and Bolt's rank has been opened up, and they are trying to establish whether that is allowed and how that is happening. It's obviously a competition between the two, because some will want to rather use Uber and Bolt. Taxis are saying how is this being regulated. Let's listen to what the e-hailing association, the National E-hailing Association, had to say in terms of really putting the blame at government's door, to say that this was an issue that's been happening for years now. It's not a new problem, and it's the failure on government's part that have not been able to regularize the e-hailing sector. Let's listen into that.
Many people within e-hailing are operating with a slip to prove that they've applied for a permit. But that permit has never come. And some of these slips are more than 5, 6, 7 years old, waiting for feedback from Department of Road and Transportation. They, at some stage, were under a moratorium. At some stage, they were trying to establish a proper permitting regime. We were told they are waiting for the law to be signed in. So again, it goes back to government to say, you need to regulate and put a permitting regime in place so that whether it is the marshals, security guards, law enforcement, SAPs, they are able to identify this is a legitimate operator, this isn't a legitimate operator. Now, with the people who are queuing at malls, what we've come to understand, they are not operating legally. They use the apps to do a price estimate. And once they have a price estimate, they negotiate with the customer based on that. And this process is now undermining the traditional minibus taxi industry, who has a right to be at the malls.
Right, that was your eNCA lunchtime update from all angles with reporters Heidi, Giokos, Dasen, Thathiah and Lethiwe Mdluli. Thank you, team. Let's leave it there for now.